Um, thank you. Awesome. I was going to forget to do that. So thank you all for being here. And thank you, Dr. Reynolds Andújar, for joining us from the Dominican Republic. So I think most of us know you, but just to give a brief overview, right? You're Dr. Reynolds Andújar. Rey Andújar is an assistant professor here at GSU teaching Spanish literature. Dr. Andújar has published, since 2005, has published 8 books and produced short films, earning him awards at literary and cinema festivals in Spain, Cuba, United States, and other countries. And this is your second novel, right, Candela, which has been adapted for a film and was now shown in the Chicago Latino Film Festival, among other film festivals. Dr. Andújar has also published in scholarly publications and presented his work at various conferences. His research and teaching interests include Latin American and Caribbean studies, race, ethnicity, national identity, cultural and social studies, the relationship between body, language, and literature, and the performing arts. Dr. Andújar also serves as the editorial board of Revista Contratiempo in Chicago and is an artistic associate at Chicago's Aguijón Theater Company. And before we get started, we want to give a thank you to the Division of Arts and Letters, the College of Arts and Sciences. This event is and the streaming for this film festival is part of a UISFL grant, a 2-year grant that Dr. Novia Pagon and I run, and Rey is part of the team. And so it's a 2-year grant from the Department of Education. We're ending up our 3rd year. We have a few things going on next year that were canceled because of COVID. And so, yeah, thank you all for being here. And to get us started, I wanted to see if you could tell us, Rey, tell us about the work, and you were alluding to it right now. Tell us about the work in its original form, right, as a novel, and then adapting it to the screen. So first of all, starting off with the writing of the novel, right? What gave fruition to this obra, this work of yours?
Well, thank you for being here. It's nice to see you guys. I wrote Candela right after I wrote my first novel, El Hombre Triángulo. I was living in New York at the time, and as soon as I finished El Hombre Triángulo, I remember I started doing a little bit of the blueprints of what I wanted to do for my next book. But then I travel a lot. I was moving around, and then when I sat down to write that project, I wrote it as a movie. I wrote a script first. It was a 106 pages script. But at the moment, now things have changed. At that moment, it was very difficult to make a movie. I mean, it's difficult to make a movie, but at that time it was more difficult. So that was a project that I put away for a while. And life found me in the Dominican Republic, living for 8 months. And during those 8 months, I took the screenplay and tried to translate it into a novel in its narrative form. And that's how Candela came about. Then it was my first time working with an international publishing company. And that gave me access to a real editor, which was a great learning experience for me. And you can say that novel opened a lot of doors for me, because I was able to travel to other countries and see other markets and also see that my language, my narrative as a writer, that was so Dominican and so drenched in Caribbean flavors and sounds and accents, was going through in other Spanish, because one of the critics that I had was that my Spanish was too local and people wouldn't get it if you go to places like Colombia or Venezuela, but it wasn't the case. With the time, I remember in 2009, I went there's a film school in Cuba. It's called San Antonio de los Baños, and it's one of the most recognized film school in the world. And I went there as a guest of Gabriel Garcia Marquez I will take a workshop and then teach a class in this school. It was like a short film workshop. But in that time, I met the producer of the movie, Pablo Lozano, a Dominican kid that was studying film there, and other actors that are a friend of mine now. It was in 2010 when I went to Dominican Republic to an actual book fair to perform that I met Andres Farias Intron, the director, and he said, I want to make a movie of your work. I've been reading all your work. In fact, when every time that he had an assignment on film school, he will use one of my short stories to adapt it to make a short film. So that's how our relationship started. And at that moment, I never showed him the original screenplay that I wrote. I worked with him in the most, writing the story that we wanted for the movie. But then there was a point that I just let him be and work more in the production side of the movie because I saw his vision and what he wanted. So what he wanted basically was to create a story out of all my narrative, all my work. Like take the style, the characters, and then tell a story. And I think that he did a great job doing that.
Thank you. As a follow-up, what was able to get adequately adapted in your view, and what were some challenges in that translation, right? And I think it's interesting that you started off as a script. I didn't know that, like the novel Candela, you had a movie in mind when you started writing it.
I think that he got the atmosphere pretty well. My stories are very dark in the sense that the spaces are dark, but the characters are very shine. They have great personalities. They always have a mission. They have great hearts. Even though if they are corrupt, I try to see the other side of them and see the situation that makes them corrupt. But Andres was able to photograph pretty well the spaces that I describe, and the tones, the light, the sounds. He was able to do that pretty well. Also, something very interesting that he did was that he took characters. For example, my first novel, El Hombre Triángulo, the main character is a cop called Perez. He was young at that time, just fresh out of police academy. And then in Candela, he uses the same guy, but 20 years later, with a daughter, with a different position in the police. So I was impressed by that. And also how he used characters, even though if in my books that character is dead, he will use it anyway in his narrative, and create a situation in which that character dies or something like that. So I think that he did a great job doing that. If I didn't care, some people tell me like, oh, but I saw the movie, but it's so different than the book. But at the same time, I get it what you guys wanted to do. So in that point, in that sense, is a very different adaptation. It's not like your normal adaptation of a book.
So I know we want to open it up for our small audience here to ask questions, and I know you all have questions. But if I can ask one more question to kind of set the scene some more. I've heard you talk about this before, and I know that you're part of the Caribe Pop group, Rey. And then I was curious because the opening credits, it says something, I'm not quoting it exactly, but something about that this film, Candela, is consistent with the Caribe Pop Manifesto, right? It's a Caribe Pop film. So could you talk a little bit, just give us kind of a brief overview of that manifesto and sort of how the film, is consistent with it?
When we're talking about the manifesto, we have very serious conversations about what does it mean to make art in the Caribbean today, especially this group of artists that one is Venezuelan, the other one is Colombian, there's one from India. And we were working on Candela was kind of a side job for everybody because all of these people have their projects. But we are always get together at least once every semester to work in Candela, to bring something to the table, to prepare it, to send it to a workshop in New Orleans, or to fill out a grant. The interesting part of this movie too is that we spent 3 years writing grants and applying to different places to get things done. and it worked. Like, for example, the sound of this movie was made Lucas Film Studio. I mean, that we have the same sound that Star Wars makes me feel really, really good. Or that some scores we recorded with the LA Philharmonic and the Orquesta Sinfónica de La Habana. Like, we always wanted to do everything with the best, even if we needed to wait. So with the Caribe Pop, that was the thing, like how we create art today as Caribbean people, that has a lot to do with immigration, has a lot to do with the way we perceive technology too, the colors that we use. And we came up with this very poetic, philosophical manifesto. It was basically to give to everyone that was working in the movie, let's say that you empower people, you empower artists with that. An example of that is that our makeup artist, we never told her like, oh, you need to have her, we want her eyes this way and we want the makeup this way. No, we just told her, what is Caribe Pop for you and what is doing art in the Caribbean for you. Now, you do your makeup the way you think that you should be. And the same was with the lighting technician, the sound mixer, everybody, instead of me giving them the novel, although most of them read it, it was basically, here this Caribe Pop, this is our philosophy. This is what we want to transmit, to give people. So this is what we want people to understand. So I think that was great because that unified the concept. I think that the movie also was great. I have worked in 22 films now. And that was the film that was less stressful. And we finished earlier and we finished within the budget. I think that was a secret. Like, there was no boss. Like, everybody was the boss on their own department.
Thank you. Follow-ups, questions from everybody here? I know Ellie isn't able to access the chat, so feel free to text me, Ellie, if you have questions.
Oh, I just wanted to say I thought the movie was great. I saw it last night and it was awesome. The only thing I had a question about was at the end, did Perez die? Because it looked like he got shot, but I was like a little confused. I was like, wait, did he die or did he not die? Or was it just because he was living with guilt?
It's confusing because there are 3 movies in one movie. And there's actually four short films, because the first short film is called Tis Now. Let me share with you that short film, the link for it, so you can see it. And the short film will give you like an idea of what we wanted to do from the beginning, because the way the short film ends, Tis Now, is the way the movie starts, the Candela starts. So let me see, this is thinking. So we wanted to create these independent movies, independent work of art. So one is not related to the other. That's why, and we had to do this even in the, how you call this, in the editing room, because I don't know if you remember a scene that Lubrini goes to recognize his lover body at the morgue. There was a scene there that we wanted La Morena, the prostitute, to go and recognize Perez in the morgue as well, but we decided to take it off. We decided to take it off just to leave that to leave, how you can say, I'll send to you later, this is too slow. Just to leave the idea that Perez died, and like, you just, it's, for me, it was kind of confusing that moment too, because he shots and then he got shot. That for me has always been kind of shocking. But we wanted to create something like that, something confusing, and we have paid dearly for that, because what the people say is that it's not a common movie. It doesn't have an arc, a regular arc. It's because every little movie, every little short film has its own its own arc, I would like to say.
Okay, because to me, I took it as like he was still alive, but he was feeling so guilty because they never did anything about the guy's death, that to me, it felt like he just had to live with this guilt the rest of his life, is what I took it as.
That's a good way to put it. It's a very dark character, but the director did that because he always says that his favorite novel from my work is that first one, The Triangle Man, and in that movie, and in that novel, Perez is the Perez that you see today was the same Perez when he was young, that he was discouraged and all that. He just put 20 years. He put 20 years in the character, and he gave him a daughter, which I think is great. I'm not sure.
Now, is the first one made into a film, or the first one's not made into a film?
No, actually, we wanna start working on that now.
Oh, that would be great.
But we are also busy that we haven't been able to sit down, because that's what he wanted to do all this time. Now that he has been successful with this film, I share in the chat the link for this now.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, now that he's been so kind of successful with Candela, he now thinks that he can be more more brazen, I'll say, and make a movie so difficult like that.
So I have a follow-up question based on just piggybacking off of what Sonia was saying. And I think Ellie and I have the same question, Ellie, if I'm understanding your text correctly. So when Perez when you see the sort of blood like coming out of his shirt, right? It's after he shoots at this what I assumed was kind of a sort of apparition of Tisnao, right? Who's sort of in the like black face, he's got black makeup on his body and dressed in this as Ellie says, a headdress so evocative of Africanness or Haitianness, right? And that's the scene that you're talking about, right, Sonia, where he shoots at this apparition of Tisnao, but then it's the blood coming out of Perez.
Of his chest.
It's unclear, right, what happens.
Right.
So could you talk a little bit about like that symbolic, and again, I'm using Ellie's language here, that symbolic figure, like why that symbolic figure and how that scene was set up, the Tisnao character?
Well, the Tisnao is a character, it's one of the most popular characters in our carnival. And it's a very historical character. It comes all the way from the colony, the times when the Spaniards were living here, and they will celebrate their carnestolendas, before Holy Week, before Easter, they will celebrate their carnivals. And for us was a way to portray blackness. So the way you will do it, and to scare people, because the way you will do it now, you have makeup, but the way you will do it in the past, was that you will use like black oil, like black car oil, and put it over your body. So when you were at the carnival and you will try to touch people will get scared. That was basically the reason that you have this now. Now has changed. The beauty of it is that if you were at this now all your life in the carnival, you pass it to your kids. And you teach the kids how to make the crown and the skirt and all that. So for me, it's very fascinating, but Andres was extra fascinated for it. And it's interesting because we are from different social classes here. So he comes from a very affluent family. So normally he wouldn't be allowed to even go to the carnival. You know what I mean? So I can understand that for him, this apparition, this now was something out of this world, because this is not something that is common for him. So he's obsessed with it. You're gonna see that the first short film is called This Now, and then he follows it all the way to the movie. You can read that in many ways. You can read that because for us, when we were kids, a ghost will be white. Will have like a white, blanket or something. So I don't want to say that that's why he did it, but I can see how he creates this ghost from his past, from his childhood, coming back to him back over and over.
I'd like to add something here. So you said something out of this world, Ray, and it got me thinking a lot about how visually stunning the film is, and how much I think it participates in a sort of magic realism style. So it's clearly reality, but there's these magical theatrical moments that kind of make it like a heightened sense of reality, but with the twist of the carnival, a twist of the magic. And I find that was an incredibly evocative choice, and probably sounds like the style in which you're writing is trying to achieve there, this idea of magic realism. Along those lines, I also wanted to mention, you said a piece of yours, it's based on something called The Triangle. Is that what you said, Ray?
Yeah, my first
I noticed.
Yeah, The Triangle Man.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because one of the things that comes forward to me in the style of the film is the notion of shapes. We see triangles and squares and circles a lot, particularly in the apartment with the dramatic balcony fall. So it's not really a question as much as it was a stylistic moment for me that made me think, well, there's something going on here with shapes and how people do and don't fit certain kinds of shapes, and how puzzle pieces don't work and sometimes they do work. And so it got me thinking about the ways in which we're trying to fit certain scripts and ideas and wear masks and performances, and sometimes we don't fit.
Yeah, Novia mentions the neon, and yeah, that we do that too. The neon was purposely put in those shapes for that. And the neon comes from the Caribe Pop idea that we are the inheritors of Miami Vice, that Miami Vice style, that Miami from the late 80s and 90s, that cocaine Miami, because there was a very important moment there in our culture, in the Caribbean culture, the way that we consume culture. That was the time, around that time in the Caribbean, you started consuming more cable TV. So it wasn't anymore those Spanish shows from Spain or from France, or translations from France, or with British shows that we call them enlatados, like in can. A TV channel will buy Mr. Bean, for example, translated into Spanish or with a Spanish accent. And you will watch that over and over because that's what TV was. But then cable TV came, and it was more accessible to TV channels in our countries to buy American series, like sitcoms in the same format. So you will have like MacGyver, or I don't know, the Knight Rider, or Miami Vice for what it is, and you will see that every day. The way we watch sitcoms, it was different to the way that you watch sitcoms. You used to watch sitcoms like a show every specific day. Like on Mondays, you have this show, right? So every Monday you will wait for that show. The way we watched it, it was like every day at 7. Like from Monday to Friday at 7, you will have this show, and then the telenovela, and then this, right? Because you needed to follow on the schedule because you already had all the shows. You bought them. You bought the package. Imagine that, like for us, was like you will be as a kid every day waiting for this show, and that's what you got. Like, what do you got in Miami Vice? You got all these shirts, you got all these cars, and you got these bad Cubans bringing, or bad Colombians bringing drugs, and it was that narrative. That was so different from what we are really living. And at the same time, you will watch the news and you will see that the war on drugs was very different than the show that you were watching. So that's what Caribe Pop for us was, like having some kind of hyper normalization. Hypernormalization is a sociological theory that comes from the Berlin Wall fall, like when the Soviet Union, before the Soviet Union disappeared. It was like you put something on TV and you expect people to believe that it's true. People believe that it's on TV, but they understand that that's not reality. But you just have to put it on TV. That's what happened to us, 10 years, 20 years later. And today we have another narrative, like we were talking at the beginning, people thinking that Instagram or Twitter is the world, but what's happening outside is totally different. And those narratives can control and put pressure on certain groups, even though that's not real. Because you tell me in this country, the Dominican Republic, we live, Haitian is, we share our country with Haiti. And they're here. If you go to the street for 5 minutes, you're gonna see the guy in the corner selling, I don't know, corn on the cob. He's Haitian. The guy parking your car or something, so he's Haitian. Now they are not only taking those kind of jobs, now they're working in publishing houses, or they are managing restaurants, or working in a hotel because they speak French. So it's easy for them to translate. So you need somebody to speak French in certain places. So that's a reality. But in TV, in the news, certain groups, they want you to believe that that's never going to happen, that that's not going to happen, that we don't have Haitians and we are Dominicans. Like if pushing or putting Haitians down will make you more Dominican, but you cannot have these conversations. So that is what moves my writing and my thinking. And I would love to write more about that.
Are there any other, I have a question, but I want to make sure everyone has a go at it. Any other questions or comments? So one comment, I found that the film, and I have to read the novels now, did a very good job at layering, right? All these issues of race, privilege, corruption, gender, sexuality, did I say race? Class, right? And each one goes goes a step down to like the foundation. And so at first it was mostly about Seda, right? About her, Seda is her first name, about her story, right? Then you focus on Lieutenant Perez, and then it goes to Candela, right? And Candela kind of brings it all together. And I thought what you were saying, that the looking for actors and actresses that shine, I thought Candela was just amazing, like what they brought to the film. So I guess my question, and I didn't realize those were more than one novels in the film, right? Did you structure your novel that way, like taking a different, I mean, I know there are 3 different stories. How does that replicate or not your novel or the sequence of the novels that you wrote?
In the novel in Candela, it's actually four times. I call them like, movements, like it's 4 movements, Okay. And then I have another novel called the Futile Gestures, Los Gestos Inútiles, which is the name of the first short of the film. And that novel is also 4 movements. For me as a writer, as a fiction writer, it's easier to work that way because it gives me a structure, the way I tell the story. And it helps me to keep everything together, very compact, because I get anxiety to thinking that I didn't finish a story, or I didn't finish a narrative or a concept that I was trying to explain. So working in little spaces, specifically in Los Gestos Inútiles, that I worked, like I put a goal for myself to work like 50 pages per movement, even though I will end up with 35 or 38 after cleaning and organizing and all that. So I'm very structured when I write fiction, although it doesn't look like that in the story. But it helps me to be structured in that way. And I learned that from watching sitcoms, that you have to solve the problem. You have, the first 5 minutes you do these, then the next you do these. So also with David Mamet, I think that David Mamet has been a great influence for me, thinking about, even though if I'm writing a novel, I'm thinking about film, I'm thinking about beats and movement. So that has helped me a lot to structure myself in that way. And also I write the same way, even though I change, or the themes change, or the concept changes in the technique. I've been writing the same way since the first book, you know. First a lot of notes, then I pass it to a notebook, then from the notebook goes to the computer, then I print it, then I read it and try to work on that manuscript, and then I'll rest, and then I'll pass it again. Sometimes takes longer, like right now I have a novel that I want to finish, but I haven't been able to do that. But maybe in a break in the summer or something like that, I'll sit down and do it, finish it.
Thank you. You're muted, Sonia.
And now, is the new novel related to the other ones at all, or it's like totally separate? The
It's
new
a
one
great
you're writing.
question. It's a great question. You know that after watching the film, I wanted to explore more in some of the characters, because now I can see them, which and it's, you know, I haven't talked a lot about that, but it's worth noting or talking about it, that I saw what Andres did, and I am stealing stories and narratives and lines from what he did. For example, and this is, I want to try to be quick with this, but for example, Daniel Beltran, which is Cera's, the politician, right, that marries Cera, he dies in Los Gestos Inútiles, right? And he has a little kid, but he dies being an uncorruptible guy, like a very serious politician that is killed because he didn't want to take a bribe. But in the movie, he takes the bribe and becomes the guy that you saw. So now in my new book, what I say is that his son wrote that other novel saying that he's incorruptible. And now in the novel, in the reality, in the new novel, you can see that it was just fiction, that now he's a politician, very powerful one. He's married with Sarah, they've been married for a while, and there's a situation there. So yeah, I'm betting on that. I'm stealing now my own characters after I was able to see them in the flesh, you know, and see them in the flesh. That's been a gift to me.
Can I just add a quick observation that I made about the characters? So initially I read them as three different people, but then by the end, and as we're talking more about this, I sort of maybe read them as pieces of the same person, right? In some ways, a kind of struggle that unites the three of them. So I don't know if that's helpful as you're thinking about the new life of these people and these stories, but in some ways, it's, again, I go back to the magic realism that allows me to think of these three people not just as independent of one another, but sort of pieces of one another.
They all have some part of me, you know. They all have some part of me. I always say that, like, even I don't care if it's a, you know, a man, woman, kid, all those characters have something directly that comes directly from me.
I have a question from Ellie, and I'm going to add on just a little sort of intro that we've talked a little bit, and we were talking before we started sort of officially, right, before we started recording, about, so the film makes several like critiques, right, about corruption and race and class and all this. You know, Yana mentioned some of this before as well. So Ellie's question is, do the film's critiques of the Dominican Republic, like, have they presented problems for you given your current work? Has there been, like, what's the feedback been like, I guess, from the public and maybe also from the government?
Well, so far it's been great. Like, we were here in a film festival, and we won most of the awards. We have won like 6 international awards so far, including the Biarritz Film Festival, the Grand Prix of the jury, which is great. The general public that hasn't been able to see the movie, they have accepted, they understand it's a great work of art and all that. But I told you there's, you know, these factions and these people that they don't read art that way, and they see everything as an statement, or, you know, so I wouldn't say that I don't care. And I still say like I don't care much, because I'm an artist and that's what I do. But now in this new position, I thought about it for a while, but then I went back to my original way of thinking. The fact that I'm being here in the book fair doing the things that I'm doing, and I have the whole country divided. A country half of the country saying that the book is a failure because we want to be too open, and another part of the country saying that they love the book fair because it was the first time that they were able to have a voice. Even though we didn't do all that we wanted to do now, I think it was a great step forward. I think you have to understand that those years that Trump was in power basically did a lot of damage to other democracies too. I can see that now. How people feel different in a way that I think that if we make any step forward to be in better democracies and better countries and more understanding or tolerant to each other, those 4 years were very damaging to that. And I would like to say that the war in Ukraine right now has a lot to do with that. And the attitude that you find in these little democracies like here in the Dominican Republic has a lot to do with that too. Respect for women or LGBT communities or Black people or Afro people or different people, whatever. It's there. Let me put it this way. These little groups that are like ultra nationalists or racist and all that, they are always looking for ghosts and places to put blame so they can justify their hate. That's clear there. So that's what's happening right now, and they feel stronger now because they know, they think that they can. So I wouldn't be surprised if something happens tomorrow and somebody says like, oh, they canceled that film because there's a drag queen there, for example, and they will feel that they can do that. Oh, I don't want to see young people, you know, seeing that.
Hi, folks. I'm still on the train, so if it's too noisy, let me know and I'll stop. But I just wanted to ask for your comments on this. I found, you know, some parts of the film I really loved. At the same time, I found the depictions of women in it very problematic, right? We have somebody who's senile. We have the stereotypical whore with the heart of gold. And then we have the Borgesita, whose agency is found in being violent and her and also in you know, agency being violent towards somebody else and then towards herself by committing suicide. So just some thoughts about what you think about those depictions of women.
I thought about it a lot when we were putting the story together. What I can say about that is a very cliche. We resorted to, without maybe with maybe no intention, we ended up doing what we criticize a lot, which is putting people in cliches, like you know, we submitted to that. So, but you can find that in my writing too. I do that too, because but in literature, I can get away with some things because I can explain them more, because I have more space and I can put them in a different context. In the movie, it looks different. So I agree with that there. That we could have done a better job. Maybe we can do that in another film. I can see that pretty clear. I agree with you there.
Excuse me. I have another.
So,
Oh,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
go ahead, Sonia. No, you go ahead. Your preference.
So are the books available like to purchase or like to get from a library?
You can get Candela in Spanish on Kindle on Amazon.
Oh,
And you
okay.
can get Saturnalia, which is short stories translated in English on Amazon as well. Those are my 2 books that are available. I have, even though I have 7 books, the dissertation and other 6 fiction books, my publishing situation is kind of the same like most of writers in the Caribbean or Caribbean writers. We don't have agents. It's hard to put your books out there, hard to find. I think I could have done a better job doing that, but I have always had a handicap in self-promoting myself. So from time to time, I try to have books available, but when life gets too busy, I don't think about that. I think about writing, you know.
Okay. And then I have a question for you as an author. So I've been trying to write this book forever, like for years and years. I don't know how many years. And I keep getting writer's block. What do you do with that? As an author, what do you do with writer's block?
Writer's block, you just have to go back at it. You just have to go back at it because you can have writer's block, but nothing will impede you to sit down in front of the work and work. And if you have writer's block, then go back to the last paragraph, because sometimes when we have that block, it's because we are thinking in the next paragraph. Maybe you want to jump the paragraph and go to the paragraph that you don't think that I don't know if you get this. Like what I'm trying to say is that you're telling a story and you stop and you're blocked because you think that you know what's going next and that you want to think about what it is so you can go next. But what I'm telling you is that maybe you can or go a paragraph back or go a paragraph forward and jump that block, jump that paragraph that you think that is blocking you and start somewhere else. Look at Patrick, trying to make sense of that. But I that's how I deal with the block. You deal with the block going back to the drawing table, going back again and again and again until it's done. Because the problem with the block is that you feel blocked and then you leave the work. And that's what is tough. But if you keep going back at it, you're gonna hit it at some point.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Is there any other question from any of you? I have one final, maybe to wrap up and thinking about this whole process. What was it like for you seeing your characters come to, I mean, they were already alive, but seeing them in screen, like being able to hear them like through the actors and actresses that were chosen that participated for this project? Did something surprise you about them? Did you learn more about them? You alluded a little bit to this earlier.
Yeah, not only with the actors but everybody, the crew, you know, I learned a lot about myself too, and actually became closer to Andres and Pablo out of this process. Like I learned a lot about, you know, patience and organizing. This took 6 years this movie took 6 years to put together, and we filmed it in 19 days. Think about that. 19 years to, 6 years to film in 19 days, and then wait a whole another year in the editing, coloring, music process. So I think what I learned was patience, to be patient.
Yeah, I love the colors from the movie, by the way. I love them.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us. Thank you so much, Rey, for joining us. I know you have a busy day and you have more stuff more events coming up today for you.
I'm going to give a speech now for the last day of the book fair. So
El cierre, the closure. Yeah. Or how do you say it in English? The closing?
Go to Chicago tomorrow. So.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I enjoyed viewing it, and thank you for the opportunity to chat with you about this.
No,
And have
thank you. Thank you.
safe travels.
It was nice seeing you, and I'll see you soon this week.
Mhm. Take
Thank
care,
you.
Great
everyone.
job.
Thanks.
Great job with
Gracias.
it. Thank you.